Hey y'all, welcome back to Bowls with the Bard. My name is Cakes. I am your host. Today we are talking with Regine Vital, who is currently rehearsing as Louise in The Seven Guitars at the Actors Shakespeare Project in Boston. Regine, would you like to tell the people a little about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. I'm from the Boston area. Born in Boston, raised in Somerville, Mass. And I've been acting now, at least on the Boston scene for, oh God, every time I have to think about this, I'm like, where does the time go? Where has the time gone? It's been almost 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And it's weird because whenever I think about it, because I feel like I only just started, because I feel like I'm still like getting to know people and doing things. But I guess it's been almost 10 years, like 2013, 2014, I think.
Oh, cool.
Around there. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about me. I guess that's what I'll say for now.
No worries. That's exactly how I am. Whenever anybody asks me a question about myself, everything I know is like, bye.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, awesome. Before we dive too far into an interview, I'm going to smoke a little bowl. Unfortunately, nice. Regine is feeling a little under the weather, so she will not join me today, but that's okay. We got to do what we got to do to take care of our bodies. So, yes.
Hopefully, like maybe I'll have a reason for there to be a next time, at which point we'll go full out.
Hey, the next season that we're doing is going to be all about like the problem plays. So if you feel passionately about one of those, I would love to have you back. All right, y'all, we are back with Regine. I am nice and high. Regine is sticky.
But contact high through the
yes,
cyberwebs. It's gonna come. Yeah.
I'm 100% sure that's how it works. So Regine, I'll get us started with my favorite question to ask everybody first, which is, what experience got you to love Shakespeare?
Oh, wow. So if I have to pinpoint something, I would say it was, so after undergrad, I went to Boston University for undergrad and I majored in English and history, but kind of like had no clue what I was doing. I was like, I like to read and I like history, so cool. But somehow I never took a Shakespeare class, like to be an English major and not take a required Shakespeare course. Like I did, Shakespeare. I read some Shakespeare, but it was never because it was a Shakespeare class. I think I read like Othello in a general humanities, like great books course. And then I took two classes that were about other writers from the period. So we didn't read any Shakespeare in those courses. And so like I'd graduated undergrad. I think I'd been out about a year and a half or 2 years. And I was like, I'm kind of bored. I think I want to go back to school, but I don't know what I want to study. Let me take a couple of just, whatever courses at BU at the time. I think it's still there, but it was Metropolitan College at BU, which is like the night school. If you want to learn more things or, get like a secondary degree, but you have a day job. I took a Shakespeare class with Professor Benjou, still remember him, and had a blast. I was like, oh my God, how did I not do this like for real in undergrad? And it's probably good that I didn't, because it meant the pressure was off. Like I really was just reading the material out of curiosity and because I wanted to, as opposed to being like mandated to. Like Professor Benjou was just great. He had so much enthusiasm for it and he was funny and he had interesting ways of talking about the plays that like I hadn't really gotten before. And I was just like, I think I'm interested. And then I that following semester I took another class again with Professor Zhu, and I was just like, okay, this is it. Like I didn't know exactly how I was going to like make a career out of it, but I was like, I think like Shakespeare is going to help me figure some professional career stuff out, and that's really what happened.
That's awesome. I feel like it's so hard to find good Shakespeare teachers, so that's very lucky.
Yeah, I agree. I the first time, I mean, you read Shakespeare in high school, and it wasn't so much that I didn't enjoy it, like, we read it in high school. But I do remember like reading Hamlet my senior year in high school. And I remember finishing it and be like, never again. I will never read this play again. I don't want to touch Shakespeare ever again. Like, just keep it away from me. It didn't quite work out that way, but but still, it was. I remember just thinking like nobody taught it well to me until that class.
No, yeah, I feel very passionately that like Hamlet's great, but maybe shouldn't be people's Shakespeare starter play. Like,
No,
it's a
absolutely
lot.
not. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. And it's usually not. I feel like most people like when like teachers are introducing young people to Shakespeare, it's like Romeo and Juliet or A Midsummer
Mhm.
Night's Dream, to which I always say, like, I don't know that you should be reading A Midsummer Night's Dream with eighth graders. I mean, the play is it's dark as fuck. And like there are all sorts of consent issues at play. Like, I don't know that we want to be doing that. And also Romeo and Juliet ends with a double suicide. Like, I mean, I don't know. Oh, and it's a filthy play. Like the first 2.5 acts are filthy. Like, I don't know that, like, I mean, I'm not saying that 13-year-olds don't already have like their own ways of talking about those things, but like, do we want to give them the Shakespeare's double entendres in addition? Like,
It's so true. I was just rereading Romeo and Juliet and had a few of those similar thoughts, but I guess to be fair, like I think I read Midsummer in 7th grade,
oh
and
wow.
I think I just hadn't had conversations about like consent or many about like sex the way that it's presented in that play. So I think a lot of it was over my head, but I also grew up in Draper, Utah. So I was very sheltered, and that probably plays a part in that. Yeah. But yeah,
Yeah,
you're right.
having never been to Utah, I would say, like, me, I mean, like, so I was in a production of A Midsummer Night's Dream last year, and it was mostly for students. So it was like a series of student matinees. And we had, I think there were some high school aged kids there, but we also had some like 7th and 8th graders. I think we might have had as young as 6th grade. And I remember in the talk back after, like, they were never explicit questions about consent or about, sexual activity or anything like that. But the vibe that I got from those kids was that they kind of like got some of those that subtext and undertones. And it's not like we were trying to push that on them. Like, I think they just kind of got it. So yeah, I'm always a little bit like, thank God I'm not your teacher. I am not the one teaching this to you, so I don't have to deal with it. But yeah.
Yeah, huh. Good for them for recognizing those things so young. That's actually kind of cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, moving forward, you studied at King's College and the Globe, which is so freaking cool. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences there, like the highlights, what you would change if you would change anything?
Yeah. No, yeah. So it's this really great program. It's a 1-year master's program. And it's just generally called Shakespeare Studies, but it's not just Shakespeare that you study. It's a bit of theater history, a bit of like regular like literary critical studies type stuff, and some performance studies as well. So you think about the work as literature, but you also think about it as theater to be performed in front of an audience that has effect. And also thinking about what does it mean to create essentially the theater industry in the early modern period. I think sometimes we forget that one of the things Shakespeare was also doing besides writing these plays was helping to create an entire industry within the society of like performing plays and making it a commercial enterprise. I think, we think of him as the bard, but he was a businessman as well. Like he was making money off of this stuff in all sorts of ways. And so that's one of the ways that the program works, is to kind of really get us to, at least one of the things that I got out of it, I will say for me, is a de-romanticized notion of what Shakespeare is as dramatic text, as a person in history, and as theater, as an artistic exercise, activity, work. And it was really, really cool. I really wanted something that I really wanted to be in a space where I just kind of felt more immersed in Shakespeare, and that's why I'd found out about it. But what ended up happening was I kind of got like this whole world cracked open in a really lovely way. So we encountered Ben Jonson and Marlowe and Fletcher and Beaumont and Fletcher and all these other writers who we just never talk about in like in a broader conversation about Shakespeare and like the theater and in society, which is wild because Shakespeare wasn't even the most popular writer in the period. Like he didn't even write the best-selling play of the period. That was, it was Middleton, Thomas Middleton did. And a lot, he didn't even write, the first folio that was ever published or printed wasn't Shakespeare's folio. It wasn't the 1623. It was Ben Jonson, who, he's like, I'm going to put out a folio of my own work. Right. And it was like that precedent that was like, oh, let's do this for Shakespeare. And so like, it was really, really great to kind of be in a space that, allowed that sort of area to be more than what it is, than what it had felt like before. And there's, I feel like, if you're able to do it, if it's financially possible, studying Shakespeare in England is like amazing, and studying Shakespeare in London is amazing, to like be on the Bankside, like at the Globe, which is not just a theatrical entertainment venue but also a research venue. So you're meeting scholars and researchers and actors and performers, and there's just this really lovely ecosystem there to kind of be immersed in a world and not just a subject. And that's what it felt like for me. And I met some really great people, some smart people, the people who are in my cohort. I consider, a number of the people that were my instructors while I was there to be like mentors and, like advisors about things. And it was really actually quite instrumental in me figuring out as an artist, like forget just as a student, as a like, somebody who's just interested, like as an artist, what is it that I enjoy about what I do in the theater? Why do I do what I do in the theater? And it's helped me to figure out that I have a practice as well, which has been really nice.
Wow. That sounds like such a wonderfully well-rounded program. Like, I feel like when I think about the angle at which the average person comes at Shakespeare, it's like literary or performance or historical context, and you got all of those things, which is amazing.
Yeah. And like, it's like I said, it's a 1-year program, and there's a lot that still needs to be done. And I know that there's work being done around that. So like, engaging with Shakespeare from an anti-racism lens, thinking about it through critical race studies and queer studies and all those things. And there's a lot of that work that's happening. And there are ways in which it's happening in the classroom, and there are also things that are happening on the stage. And so finding the ways to bring that together, is I think something that needs to continue. I also had like the bonus of being able to do an internship at the Globe. So like I had like an extra foot into the milieu of it all. So it was just, it was a really kind of full, well-rounded experience. It's a lot to fit into a year. So there were definitely things when I was like, oh, I wish I could spend more time like with this play or with this playwright or thinking about this concept. in practice, in performance. But I think generally for what the program is trying to do and wants to do, and I think as goals for itself, it was a quite profound experience for me.
That's awesome. What was your responsibility as an intern at the Globe?
I was a research assistant.
Okay.
It's a job that is posted. They like to have like an MA person, somebody who's doing a master's or doing some sort of higher education degree, apply for it. And it just worked out that like the two folks they hired the year that I was there, we were both on the program. And so it was fun. It was I was an employee of the Globe for like 6 months. And I got to know so many great people. I think that was the other thing. I think that's the other reason why for me I had such a great time is I moving from home, and it was it wasn't the first time I'd been abroad, but I was like truly living away from home for an extended period of time. And it was in another country. Like it wasn't just like moving to another city or moving to another state. Like I crossed an ocean. And I had friends there. So I had people for support, and I made friends on the program. So it's not like I was without community. But what was nice about being an intern at the Globe, in addition to making a few extra bucks while I was there, was like I got to know all these people who were working in this building, like whether it was, greeters at the door, people at the box office, or there's like a pub that's adjacent to the theater. And so at the time we would go back and forth. So like these people who went from serving me drinks with my friends and hoping that we didn't break all their glasses. Suddenly we're like, I'd see them after work, and like I'd pop in and be able to say like, hi, how are you? And have conversations with them. And the same with like the, security folks and like front of house people. It was just a really nice, I got to experience this really lovely community in a place that I really love and felt at home at in the Globe, in a city that I really felt connected to and really felt at home at. So it was just kind of like this perfect little nugget in some ways.
Wow. That's really incredible. That makes me very happy for you. I can just see like your eyes are like twinkling right now.
I kind of love it.
Oh man, I'm jealous. I might have to look into that program.
See, I fully encourage you to do so. It's a great program. The Farah Kareem Cooper, who is the head of higher education at the Globe, is doing some really, really great work around making, not just like studying Shakespeare more equitably, but making the field more equitable and anti-racist, along with a lot of other scholars and researchers. And the person who's who's overseeing the MA program, Will Tosh, is just a sweetheart and smart and fun and interesting, and both of them are just lovely. So they're like great supporters, and so I would say absolutely look into it if you'd like to. I feel like I'm plugging it, and that's not the point of it, but
no, that's okay.
Yeah.
Plug it just for me. Like honestly, if for no one else, I will take the plug because I love this stuff. So nice. Awesome. So kind of looking ahead to the present, you have taken all of these wonderful skills and built a very amazing career for yourself, and you are currently acting with the Actors Shakespeare Project in Boston in 7 Guitars. Could you maybe give us like a brief summary of the play? Tell us a little about your character and how rehearsals are going.
Yeah, so 7 Guitars is a play about, I think generally speaking, and I think this is true about all of August Wilson's work in the American Century Cycle. It's about, the American dream and what the American dream looks like for particular people at a given moment. So it's set in 1948. We have a young Black man who served in the war, has come home, got a raw deal, and when he got arrested and put in jail for 30 days for really no reason. But he has this dream of becoming a musician. He wants to be a jazz musician, and he's talented and he's passionate. but trying to make it work, trying to like, what's the opportunity that's going to set him on the path. And he's got a band, and how does he relate to the folks in this band, and what are their dreams for their futures, and what does it look like for these people to be Black and fully expressed and successful in a world that in a lot of ways it feels like it's doing everything to stamp them out. And the play, in a lot of ways, really focuses on that for the men in the story, the young men. There's one older gentleman as well who plays the character's name is Headley. But for the most, actually, there's another. Well, I guess they're young men and also like middle-aged men. But it's like these men who are kind of like in this world. Who does this world value them? Does this world allow them to acquire value? And I mean that in every sense of the word, to be valued. I mean, they are valuable. They're humans. They're living, breathing human beings. They're valuable. But do they get to, do they get to be artists? Do they get to be fathers? Do they get to be lovers? Do they get to love the people that they want to be with? All these different things. And I think that's that's kind of like the general way that I would describe the play. I think it's also in general about a group of people who found a way to make a family amongst themselves. There are 4 men and 3 women in the play. And you get the sense of a lot of what it means to be Black sometimes is to kind of create your community. And in creating community, you create your family. And, families squabble, and, they poke at each other and joke with each other. But at the end of the day, how do they come together to care for each other? And that, I think, is another thing that this play portrays in a really beautiful way. I play Louise, and Louise is kind of like this sort of no nonsense, fierce. I don't know, this fierce sounds cliche, but she's got, a lot of strength and a lot of attitude and a lot of presence, but she's also fun. She's kind of like one of the guys, but the guys also know that she's the boss. Don't mess around with her. And so it's been a really interesting role for me to play, because I've played strong women before, but in a lot of ways this role is been interesting and different for me, because like the kind of like a energy that Louise has. Was trying to parse this out with the cast and the director recently. It was like she feels like she's got all this kind of like sexual energy, and not because she's sexualizing herself or being sexualized, but that there's this kind of verve and life that runs through her that is both strong and powerful, but also sexy and alluring, and brings people in. Like everybody, the people in this place are all connected to her in some way, shape, or form. And you get the vibe that like she's kind of glue that holds the group together. At least that's how I feel about her. And it's an interesting way to kind of occupy that like space. Like I'm not going to say that, I mean, August is, if there's a criticism of August Wilson's work, it is that there should be more women in his plays, and there should be more like portrayals of Black women in his plays. But the thing that I feel like I'm finding for myself in Louise is this kind of that gender, like she has to live within the body she's in, right? It's 1948 in the United States. She's a Black woman. That means certain things about how she gets to express herself and exist in the world. But within the space that she's created with these people, it almost doesn't matter. Like when she's hanging out with the guys and she's flirting with them, she's flirting with them like a man and a woman are flirting, but like actually it's not that. It's all her, like her presence and who this person is. That's kind of this allure. And I'm really kind of enjoying figuring that out.
That's really cool. The first thing that came to mind for me is like, as much as I love Shakespeare, his women are not always like multi-dimensional.
Yep.
So it sounds nice to play a woman who, go.
No, I was just gonna say, like, you're right. Like, this is one of the complaints about Shakespeare. It's like not only are there not a lot of, there aren't a lot of women in Shakespeare either. Like when you consider what 36, 37, 38, whatever number you want to use, plays in the canon, the number of women to the number of men is, you know, they are not close. And then if you're just thinking about like women in consequential roles versus, it's just, the numbers aren't close. And then those women, how many of those women are like multi-dimensional or have the potential to be fleshed out to be multi-dimensional? What I can say about August Wilson is he may not have a lot of women in his plays, in the overall, you know, canon of his plays, but the women he wrote, they are formidable. And they take up space, and they are consequential, and they, if they don't have agency, they are determined to find it. And so, you know, if you, as an actor who identifies as a woman, it's a meaty gift, right? To know that, like, you know, the men are titans in these plays, but so are the women, across the board. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh, what a joy to experience. So I guess while we're looking at this play in the context of Shakespeare, why do you feel like a play like this is fitting for a theater like the Actors Shakespeare Project?
I think that's going to be like a constant question. Like, wait, you know, Actors Shakespeare Project, shouldn't the project be Shakespeare? Like, how are they? And like, I hear that, but I think there are a couple of ways to answer this. There are those who consider August Wilson to be America's Shakespeare. Like when you look at what American theater is and American playwrights, the scope and depth and breadth of the work that August Wilson created, and in a lot of ways, like, I mean, August Wilson died in 2005, I believe. His first play was produced in 1986. So there's like a really compressed amount of time in which that he, and of course, if it premiered in 86, it would have, you know, he'd been working on it before that. But we're looking at about 25 years at a set of plays in the American century cycle, 10 plays, one for each decade of the 20th century, that is trying to speak to the experience of Black Americans in the US, specifically African Americans from the US, you know, from the Great Migration on. And even though the plays are only set in a century, what he's actually trying to do is talk about what the Black experience in America has been since the founding of it. Right? Like in Gem of the Ocean, which is story-wise the first play in the cycle, one of the main characters, Aunt Esther, is 300 and some odd years old. I can't remember the exact number, but when you do the math, it tracks her back to, she would have been born in 1604, which would have been the founding of the Jamestown colony in Virginia. And so there's this way in which he's talking about the presence of Black people on this continent for much longer than we tend to give, you know, them credit for or actually seek to acknowledge. And what does that mean? And he does that by telling stories of like regular people. Like in Seven Guitars, Floyd Barton is a regular person. Floyd Schoolboy Barton, he's just a regular guy with like a regular dream. He like, I want to be an artist, right? I want to just play music. Louise is just like a regular woman who's like, you know, I've had some shit happen to me, and, you know, but I keep going. And my best friend lives next door, and we get together and we play cards and we have a good time. And, you know, life happens, tragedy happens, but it's life. And in a lot of ways, it's so recognizable. And I think the reason August Wilson is able to be America's Shakespeare is because he takes stories that feel that, you know, on its face, on paper, may seem small, but he tells these stories in such epic proportions. Like the metaphors are epic, the similes are epic, the you know, the connection. Like we read something on page 1, act 1, scene 1, and then, like, you know, 5 scenes later, it's like, wait a minute, like this was being laid out for me the entire time. And that's sort of like, I don't want to say structure is not the right word, but that's sort of like that very skilled, specific storytelling craft I don't think a lot of people have it. And I know, I love Arthur Miller, and there are plays that Arthur Miller has written that I've loved and I've seen, but like I still think August Wilson is doing something bigger and something deeper and more radical in some ways. I think it's the same thing when it comes to Eugene O'Neill. I just think what August Wilson is trying to do it's about so much more than telling a story. I think he's also trying to craft the genre or remake the genre of dramatic text. And that's what Shakespeare was doing. And all his co-writers, they were creating something, like as they were building the plane, as they were flying it, and like making adjustments as it would, like, oh, this wing's a little bit wobbly, we need to fix it, like, so it can continue to fly. And I think you can see August Wilson doing something similar in his work, and the fact that he does it, has this like consistent sort of series of works that connect. I mean, I think the thing that's closest to it in Shakespeare's canon, ironically enough, would be the history plays. The history plays as a series, and we know the first tetralogy and the second tetralogy. So there's the Richard II, Henry IV, part 1, part 2, Henry V, and then Henry VI through Richard III, the 8. But if you tack on also King John, which is technically one of them, Henry VIII, which is also one, and if you want for kicks, Sir Thomas More, which Shakespeare did co-write, those are 10 plays, 10 to 11 plays. Right. And the history plays are never just about the intrigue of court. They are about the history of a people, how England became what England is. Like when you read those plays, you're not just reading epics about great men who fall. You are also inevitably reading about the making of a people, the making of a nation, and the making of how they exist in the world, the whys, the hows, and the whens they got there. And August Wilson is also doing that, except he takes regular people and shows that their lives are just as epic and great as the great men that we think of. And then that's where the sort of the effect of it is. And there's beauty in that. And I mean, that's a very long answer. There are lots of other ways I could answer the question, but those are the things that I think of.
Yeah, no, that's great. I've been having a lot of conversations with my Shakespeare peeps about like, what does it look like to redefine the word classic and to like say, okay, well, if we didn't take the care to keep what other communities may have defined as classics around so we can read them, like what are classic plays? What are classic stories? What does that mean? And I feel like you just defined that beautifully. Like it doesn't have to be a 400-year-old play for it to be classic in a sense. And I feel like that kind of storytelling is classic. We're in a moment. I mean, I also do education work. So, for me, I'm like kind of and I feel like in the midst of that tension of, do we teach the canon or do we teach, like, how can we be culturally responsive to the students we teach? Does that mean we have to ignore the classics, right? Capital T, capital C. Yeah.
Or does it mean that we say there are more classics, right, and kind of extend that list? But then it's a question of, well, like, if you saturate the space, like, how do you make sure you center the things that need to be lifted up? So I know, like, I get that there's a tension, and then there's also just like, like the definition of classic as meaning old. Like if it's old, that's what makes it classic. So it's it's a tension that I feel that push and pull often. And even with August Wilson, I think it's a question, right? Like August Wilson, and for a lot of people, to do his work is to do a classic piece of text, an old piece of text. Why aren't we doing contemporary Black playwrights, young Black playwrights who are writing now? To which I say, I hear you, yes, and a lot of those Black playwrights are probably writing because they read August Wilson's work. And so I'm a proponent of connecting the genealogical dots. Shakespeare's not the source of all good English literature, but understanding Shakespeare will help you understand why English literature operates the way it does, right? August Wilson's not the only great Black playwright, but understanding August Wilson will help you to understand what it means to read a Dominique Morisseau or, you know, a Sybil's Drury, or, you know, a lot of these other amazing contemporary Black playwrights that we're reading today.
Cool. I guess keeping that in mind, and keeping in mind that this podcast cares a lot about the idea of community and uplifting that, why do you think Seven Guitars is an important piece of theater for the Boston theater community to experience?
Yeah, it's tricky. So what's one of the things that's interesting about this piece is, you know, Boston's a wild town. It's I think bigger than, it's not a big city, like it's not New York, but in so many ways I think it's bigger than most people realize, because there are actually so many different groups and communities in Boston. And so you know, Actors Shakespeare Project is a theater company in Boston, but it is in a lot of ways an itinerant company. It kind of performs in multiple different places during the course of a season. This play specifically is going to be performed at Hibernian Hall. It's being produced in partnership with Hibernian Hall, which is an institution in Dorchester, right smack dab in Black Boston, essentially, like, or near Black Boston. And so to be telling this play, which was written by a Black playwright about the Black experience, it's a cast of all Black people, directed by a Black director. Chris, who's the artistic of Actors Shakespeare Project, identifies as a Black man. And so you have this, like, a whole lot of things coming together, I think, in this production. And it highlights and centers and uplifts a story and a way of existing in the world that isn't immediately, I think, associated with Boston, but is in Boston. Like the Hill District, where the plays take place, where these people live, is a Black neighborhood. So to do a play about Black people living in a Black neighborhood means something. You know, those folks they know a Floyd, they know a Louise, they know a Vera, who is another character in the play. They know Red Carter, who is another character in the play. They know Canewell, they know Ruby, all these people, Headley, right? They will know these people. And so I think that's one layer of it, is like being able to have these recognizable figures in a place that will recognize them. I think it's also really important in a city like Boston that, you know, believes itself to be super erudite and like smart and intellectual, and look at all the stuff that we know. And like, we know August Wilson because August Wilson was produced at, the local theaters all the time. Great. But what do you know about Black people? What do you know about the people he's writing about? And not that you should take Boston should take everything that they know about Black folks from one play or even a series of plays by a Black playwright, right? Black people are not a monolith. But I think that, you know, I really believe in the power of theater to be the sort of experience that allows us to reimagine reality, and to see, and also to re-see reality. Like, I think when you go to the theater, if you're just having a passive experience where it's like you saw this thing and it was all on stage and none of it actually touched you and affected you and made your brain do things and your heart do things, and you didn't really go to the theater. I think when we're living in a moment where engaging with people that you don't usually engage with in a highly segregated town like Boston, I think this kind of work is important. So it's important, I think, for Black folks, for Black and brown folks to be like, yeah, my stories are on stage. And it's important for white folks to be like, yes, your stories deserve that stage, should have that stage, and have the grandeur that is just what the experience of Black folks is. But also we should come in and listen and actually hear what that is, the experience of Black folks is. I think that's important in Boston, because, you know, Boston likes to pat itself on its back, but I don't know that it necessarily always deserves that.
I feel that. Coming from a lot of what you just said resonates. DC is definitely more of a Black city than Boston. But beyond that, definitely similar, like big city, small city vibes, and a lot of we like to pat ourselves on the back, but maybe we've got some more work to do.
I mean, I love Boston. It's home. My parents emigrated to the States, and this is where they chose to make a home. So this is where they raised us. So like, I'm not like, you know, trying to bag on Boston like it's a shitty place. Like, it has its problems, and I think that we need to, you know, confront that in reality. And you know, I still love this city a whole lot. I will probably be buried here when the time comes, right? And it's because I love this city that much that I think I'm like, we can do better. Let's do better.
Yes. I love that. That's like my motto. If you love something and you can see how it could be better, you should push it a little bit to get there.
Yeah.
So that's lovely. And, you know, I think it's also wonderful that I think it's important to cater to the community that your theater is in. And I think it's wonderful that Actors Shakespeare Project seems to be doing that. Regine, I think that is all I have for you today. Do you have anything else you want to add?
I mean, I would just say, if, you know, to your listeners and your viewers, if this is also going, like, if you can come down to see Actors Shakespeare Project's production of Seven Guitars, I think you should, at Hibernian Hall. It's like, I'm so bad at like self-promotion. It is literally not what I do. Like, most of the time when I'm in a show, my friends and family don't find out about it until closing weekend, because I'm like, well, now I know it's good. And also, like, you might not be able to come see me anyway, so I'm fine. But like this piece just feels, there's just a lot of really beautiful work happening on that stage by a lot of really talented, smart, compassionate people. And like, I just want them to be seen. It's rare that you get to be a part of a piece that is this good and also is like good at helping, like, getting the group working on it to feel close. Like, the material lends it, like, truly does lend itself to a certain kind of camaraderie, and it's just been really, really lovely and special. And I just want my castmates, I want their work to be seen, and I want, like, you know, the entire team that's working on this, designers, crew, stage management, direction, all of them. I just want their work to be seen. I am the last person you will remember if you come to see this, because there's just that much wonderfulness happening. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's lovely. I know that if I had all the money in the world, I would fly to Boston to go see you. This has been so delightful getting to talk to you. Seven Guitars runs from February 8th to March 5th, I believe.
Yes, that is correct.
Shakespeare Project. Awesome. I hope you all go out and see it and support. It sounds like it's gonna be a banger.
Yes.
I
think that's the right word for it.
Sweet. Again, Regine, thank you so much for doing this. You are welcome back on the show anytime. It was so wonderful talking to you.
Thank you so much.
Of course. That is what we have for y'all for today. And we will see y'all next month for another Bowls with the Bard. Bye, y'all. If you enjoyed today's episode, you can follow Regine and Bowls with the Bard at the handles either on your screen or in the description. You can also find a link to tickets to Seven Guitars at Actors Shakespeare Center in the description. Please rate, review, and subscribe. It helps the podcast so much. We will be back in February for another random episode, but I want to look forward to season 2 for a second. The next season is going to be all about Shakespeare's problem plays, how we address them, if we should at all. And season 2 is going to work a little bit differently. I plan to have multiple guests per episode so we can get some varying viewpoints on these plays and have some good conversations. So this is a bit of a call for submissions. If you have some very strong opinions about The Merchant of Venice, All's Well That Ends Well, The Winter's Tale, Troilus and Cressida, Timon of Athens, Othello, Taming of the Shrew, The Tempest, Twelfth Night, or Measure for Measure, send us an email at bullswiththebard@gmail.com and we'll get you scheduled for an interview. Of course, for some of those plays, these conversations are going to be restricted to the communities that they most impact, but let's have a good conversation. Let's find out what we can do with these problem plays, if we should still be doing them at all. We'll be back with more Bulls with the Bard next month. Until then, bye y'all.
1,000 sighs to save. Oh, lay me where sad true lover never find my grave to weep there.